Hello friends, for today's video we're going to be doing a manga vlog, and we're specifically going to be discussing volumes 2 and 3 of Magus of the Library. I recently did a first impressions for the first volume of this story, and I wanted to ensure that I did not wait too long before continuing on because I loved that first volume so much, and I wanted to give myself some motivation to pick it up. And I actually want to potentially make these manga vlogs something that I do at least somewhat frequently, or at least in a scheduled manner, maybe at least one a month or two a month, to ensure that I am in keeping up with the series that I'm getting into. I know that on this channel, I can bounce around from one thing to the next because we talk about so many different stories from across different mediums. And I feel like this will really ensure that manga still has a set place. So if you like these periodic manga vlogs, let me know. I also am curious and would appreciate your input in that I want to not go too in-depth as far as I don't want to spoil stories, because then I feel that if you're somebody who wants to check these out and you want to get an idea about these, but you also don't want to have them ruined for you, I don't want to reveal too much information about them, but at the same time, I don't want it to feel as though it's sort of a generic repeating of the same information about the story over and over again, because then it's almost besides the point. So I'm trying to figure out the right balance to strike. I'm wondering if maybe there can be a non-spoiler and then a spoiler section, or if it would be good to sort of touch on what happens but not go too specific, so that if you've picked it up, you know what I'm referring to. But if you haven't, then you just kind of have heard enough that maybe your interest is piqued, you might give the story a go. So any input that you have would definitely be appreciated, as I do want to ensure this is a regular occurrence, or relatively a regular occurrence, but that it also is something that is enjoyable and informative for all of you. I actually started this vlog with the vlog portion first. I didn't actually record an intro, so I'm recording the intro now, but it's a little weird because once I'm done with the vlog portion, then we're going to come back to this moment in time. So I can tell you I have already finished volumes 2 and 3, and I can let you know what I'm planning to do next, which is I'm going to be picking up Frieren, because these are both fantasy manga, but they're very different from each other. I do think that they fit well to be read sort of back and forth. So sometimes for a little while, I might stick to Magus at the Library, and other times I might just stick to Frieren. And then occasionally there might be a hybrid one where it's just a fantasy manga vlog and I'm reading both. I have gotten a lot of recommendations from all of you for fantasy manga or anime to check out. If you don't mind also repeating those recommendations here, as I do take screenshots, and I have looked for a lot of them at my local bookstores, but I'm not finding the ones that you're recommending. But I do want to have kind of a certain place where I can come back to and have a lot of your recommendations, so that I can continue to do fantasy specific manga vlogs, and then maybe we can do themed ones moving forward. Like we can do a sports manga vlog, and I can pick up Haikyuu, and I can maybe try the one that is by the creator of Vagabond, because I know that he has one too, and it's apparently really good. I mean, his art is incredible, so he can write about whatever, and I'll just look at the pretty art at the very least. But I'm assuming that the story is great too. But the idea being, of course, that I think it'd be fun to potentially do recurring themed manga vlogs. So if you have other fantasy manga and anime recommendations, feel free to leave those here, and that way I can continuously come back to the comments of this one and have this as a reference point, and other people can have it as a reference point as well. Today we are just sticking with Magus of the Library, and for the next one we'll be looking at Frieren, or at the very least we'll have Frieren and maybe some more Magus at the Library. There's not that much of Magus at the Library out, so part of me is like, I kind of want to take my time, but also I really want to get through everything that's currently out. There's not that much Frieren beyond where the show ends currently either, so we'll see. But we'll go ahead and jump into some reading of the volumes, and then we'll get back to, like I said before, this point in time, and we'll go over what I have read. Volumes 2 and 3 of Magus of the Library are ready to go, and then I have volumes 7 and 8 of Frieren here. These are copies that are mine, but I actually have volumes 9, 10, and 11 from the library, and then Manga Mart, who recently sponsored a video, and they have discount codes, I'll have them linked. They sent me volume 12, so I should be ready after reading these to fly through and get right into the next set of volumes. With Magus of the Library, the art is so good that I just kind of want to soak it up. So I'm probably going to be reading this one a little bit on the slower side. Before I jump into these though, for those of you that are book fans, even if you're not, I feel like you'll appreciate this. Because if you're a manga fan, you probably appreciate awesome artwork anyway. This is the broken binding edition of Grave Empire. This is what it looks like when you take its sleeve off. And this is the naked hardback. So if you go all the way around, you can see how amazing the artwork is here. And then when you open it up, this is what the inside cover art looks like. And I'll show the sleeves, or excuse me, the pages in just a second, but I want to get to the back so you can see the back cover also has amazing, amazing art. Broken binding always does an incredible, incredible job, but then we have the sprayed edges, which are great. I mean, that looks so cool. It looks even cooler in person, in my opinion. It does go all the way top. This is where I have a bookmark in. That's not any kind of flaw on their end. And then the pages are blue on the bottom. Really, really amazing work as always. But anywho, manga, that's what we're going to be looking at. Luna just came in. Should we say hi? Hi, Luna Bear. Flappy, flappy, flappy. I vacuum basically every day, but somebody is not quite done shedding. So you can see little clumps of fur. They always gather right here because we have our air vents are in the bottom because I live in a mobile home. And so it somehow always kind of ends up right around here and gets caught on the chair legs. Huh, Missy? Are you looking away in shame? And then I just vacuumed the carpet and I always find these like little fluffs where Luna Bear clearly must have been laying and then scratched her side or near her ear or something. So anyway, but speaking of animals, Luna Bear, should we show them the little baby bird? So right outside this window is a baby bird. I was looking through the window this morning and just a cute baby bird was looking back at me. I don't really know how it got where it is. I have rose bushes just outside this window and it's just in the rose bush and there's no nest or anything. So I don't know if it tried to fly and it didn't quite make it or something, but its parent keeps coming back to feed it, or potentially both its parents. I'm gonna show you in just a second here, but before I do want to note, these are really old blinds and they're really gross looking. So as we get closer, don't judge for how dirty they look. We're trying to slowly fix up the house, but it's very slow. It's a slow process because it costs a lot of money. And blinds are just, you know, not highest priority. So let's look at the baby bird though. It might take a second to find it. Let's see, might take a moment. It blends in pretty well. Earlier it was right in this opening right here, and so it's just kind of staring right back at me. Let me find it and then I'll zoom in on the exact spot. It's turned away from us right now, but that's it right there. You can see its little feathers. It's just sitting. You can see its little head. It's kind of moving. So you can't see it the best. Oh, there it goes. I'm way too excited about this little bird. I feel like than everybody else probably on the planet, but it makes me so happy. Luna, I don't think cares at all. I am a little worried. We have a lot of neighborhood cats and I'm kind of worried that the cats might try to go for the bird, but maybe Luna Bear will scare them away. Last thing I'll show before finally jumping into the manga is I got this puzzle recently. To me, this looks like a mix between Princess Mononoke and Ori and the Blind Forest. I think it's so cool. I haven't done that much of it. I do it here and there, usually if I'm listening to an audiobook, so that won't be the case today because obviously I'll be reading manga. But here's what it looks like so far. Mostly just legs and grass in the corner. But anyway, let's jump into the manga. Sorry, one more clip of the bird. There it goes, it turned around. It was squeaking, so I wanted to make sure I got a little more of it. Maybe one of the parents will come by and feed it again. I sat here for way too long earlier, just recording until the parent showed up to feed it. And I have watched that happen at least 6 or 7 times. Too many times. Oh, it's so cute. Look at me, I have a silly little baby bird head. Lots of silly fluff. Ah, feed me. Oh, it's so cute. volumes 2 and 3 of Magus of the Library. First off, the art continues to be absolutely amazing. I do feel like they really set the stage within the first volume, and I think maybe the first volume was flexing its muscles a little more often than in volumes 2 and 3. But when there would be a really, really amazing panel or an entire full page, they still continue to deliver. The artwork in this is incredible. But even when it's not showing off, you could say, I still enjoy the art style overall because there's something about it that it managed just to have the characters in a way that is very distinct, crisp, clear. They have distinct characteristics, not just in their physical features, but also how they dress. There's a lot of creativity that's utilized within that as well. And I also think it just embraces there being these different cultures, people from different places, and it really very much feels like a fantasy story. When I pick up a fantasy manga, I feel like because it's a visual medium, it's a great opportunity to get to showcase so much creativity. And I really found that within these 2 volumes, I think that was truer than within volume 1. I do still feel volume 1 was the strongest when it comes to the emotional impact because it did so much within that one chunk of time. And I was really, really moved by that character's story and arc, kind of their origin. It almost felt like a prequel, and now we've officially started the tale. And I didn't realize when I picked these up that I was essentially picking up an exam arc from beginning to end, because within these 2 volumes you do get that, and that seems like a staple in a lot of anime and manga stories. But I appreciated that this one didn't necessarily last for too long. It didn't feel like it was being drawn out too much, but it was still really compelling. There were times throughout where I was genuinely thinking, is this character gonna pass? Because that's usually the default. You usually think, okay, well, we just gotta get through this and then move on to them going out into the big blue world. I genuinely wasn't sure, and I could have found the story to be compelling either way because of the growth that we're getting with Theo, the main character. I found that if he hadn't succeeded in his exam arc, that there was still a lot of growth. There was a lot of introspection, reflecting on what he wants out of life, and essentially, as cheesy as it sounds, appreciating the journey to get there and everything that he put in, and how just because you might not succeed in the end goal of your dream, that doesn't mean that the dream isn't worth having, and that everything that you've done in preparation for that dream isn't worthwhile. It's essentially saying, no, all those things, that is what is meaningful. The other thing is kind of just the cherry on top. And even if you don't get that cherry on top, maybe life, the direction it's going to go in, is even better than what you might have expected. So that was one avenue. And then there's the avenue of if he does pass, then it's like, okay, this is what he's been working for. And the exam specifically is for him to become somebody who works within these libraries. So there is this one sort of central library in this that is a key to their entire kingdom. It stores the knowledge, which is very significant to them because not that long ago, there was this kind of magic and magi cataclysm, you could say, where there's a lot of different warring groups, and eventually peace was attained. But in order to understand what happened in the past, in order to try and prevent that happening again, it is really, really important to this group of people that works are preserved. And there's a lot of preservation of books and the development of books over time that are touched on in this, that it's actually genuinely fascinating, and I really appreciate the level of detail that goes into this, and that was integrated into part of the exam, which I thought was really, really fun and great. There are aspects of this that definitely feel youthful, which of course is present in a lot of stories where there are exam arcs, as you are often centering characters that are they themselves younger. But I can find that sometimes when you have these sort of youthful exam study session preparing and you're just trying to cram all this information in, it can feel really similar to other things. I already mentioned that I feel like this was set apart just in the very nature of I genuinely didn't know if our protagonist was going to complete the trial and pass or not. But beyond that, I felt like I was actually engrossed in what was happening, and there were things occurring surrounding or leading up to or even within the exam that were equally interesting, if not more fascinating. And it was also allowing for things to be set in place for what's to come. There's some little bits of things here and there that you hear other people or you read other people saying that you're like, wait, what's that? What's that over there, though? But I want to come back to the idea of whether Theo passes the exam or not, and why that is such a significant thing beyond just for himself. So the tiny town that he grew up in, within volume 1, you explore how they treated him when he was younger, how he learned to kind of come into himself and find a place within his community, how he changed people's minds. You do see within these volumes how he continues to take that lesson and applies it when he meets new people who maybe their minds are closed off to other individuals. So I do feel like you explore a lot of his character within that. But you also recognize that he grew up in a very small place where basically everybody knows everybody. So there is this feeling of there are people that he cares about and that care about him from his home. They also have this feeling of, I want him to pass because I know how hard he's worked. But there's a part of me that almost wishes that he wouldn't because we love him and we miss him. And there were some parts where I was like, I kind of don't want him to pass. And I don't know that I typically feel that within exam arcs before. You don't root for the characters to fail, but you're like, he'll be all right if he does fail though. And he'll especially be all right because he has people in his life that love him. That was unexpected. Within this, though, I also found that the fantasy elements, I touched on this before, but I really feel like in the travels that you get, and when he reaches this particular area where it's the library, this was really, really well showcased, and this is where we had the fantasy element really shining. I do find that within the first volume, it's the little intricacies. I was touching on the art before, how the characters can have these distinctions between them, and it can be really crisp and clear. But there's also this like cluttered effect or attention to detail that goes into, I would say, the buildings and trinkets and books, which is perfect for what this story is centering on. And that continued to be true. Some of the most awe-inspiring panels, I think, were very much rooted in this, as well as the emotional development of the character. I feel like when they really, really were wanting to showcase how great the art can be, it was in those two moments. But regardless, there were certain statues that were shown, how magic was shown, these little creatures that would show up. All of that actually reminded me of Final Fantasy, not necessarily any one specific Final Fantasy, but just Final Fantasy as a franchise. And obviously, all of you know, I'm a huge fan of Final Fantasy, but they always have really interesting enemies or fiends or creatures within their world. And they often have different races of humanoid-like creatures and beings. And the way all of that kind of comes together and how it's tied to how they treat each other, or how one is very connected to another, but then they hate this other group. So as an example, I bring up Final Fantasy X a lot, but you have Kamari is a Ronso, and then you have the Guado, and in the past, the Guado had a lot against humans, and you're seeing the way that that's somewhat been repaired, and that creates a certain dynamic between them and the religion of their world and humans, and there's all these little things. Then you have in various different Final Fantasies, you have Mughals, and they look different from one to the next, and there were just various things that popped up within this that reminded me of that. So in the sense of fantasy that just feels like it's limitless with what it can do and what you might find, I really feel like the story is delivering on that. This isn't necessarily a criticism or a con, but I do think that thus far the first volume has been my favorite. Volumes 2 and 3 very much are developing, which is also a good thing, and I'm really excited to keep going. But I don't think there were the emotional hits quite on the same level as the first. And I think there were a couple pacing things here and there, while not bad necessarily. I don't know that I felt like it was quite as perfectly tight as the first volume. Still absolutely loving this though. I cannot wait to continue on. I mentioned before that if you have any of your own recommendations, of course, feel free to leave them. But I do want to note that obviously saying like, oh, let me know your fantasy recommendations for manga and anime. Well, fantasy means, of course, so many different things. I feel like Witch Hat Atelier and Frieren, they come up in similar conversations simply because they both fall under that umbrella, but they're really different from each other. Frieren is more of a traveling story, and then Witch Hat Atelier, it's a little bit more centered in a certain area, and then they do go to other areas, but it always feels like there's a return home to their atelier, and that's kind of like home base in a sense, and it's a development of a skill. So they're very different from each other, and this story currently feels like it exists somewhere in the middle of those two. So if you do want to elaborate, if you do have your own recommendations, you are, of course, welcome to state which one you feel like it's the closest to I'm going to be excited no matter what. And you also don't have to elaborate, but I'm going to be excited no matter what the recommendations are because I love fantasy. I love manga and anime. So a combination of both those things, honestly, it's just my interest is piqued no matter what. Anyway, that's it for this particular manga fantasy vlog. If you have your own thoughts about this story up through this point, or if you want to vaguely mention some thoughts without getting into spoilers for what's to come, you're welcome to share that. Thanks so much for watching though. I hope you have a great rest of your day and I'll see you later. Bye.